Welcome to Plan 9 Crunch and Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays. I'm Doug Gibson, and we are talking to Andi Brooks, and this is a treat for the holidays. He is the editor of these two books. Can you see him here? Ghost Stories for Christmas, Volume 1, and Ghost Stories for Christmas, Volume 2. I've read every story in these books more than once. I read them every December. They're a lot of fun. Most of the stories are from the 19th century, some of the early 20th century. Are there some from Australia also? I think one of them I read might have been. I don't know.
There may have been. Actually, my memory is, I have to
Yeah,
admit,
that's okay.
very
That's
bad.
okay.
It's several years since I published them. But I'm preparing a future volume of Australian Christmas ghost
Really?
stories, which
That'd be fantastic.
very interesting, completely different atmosphere.
Oh, definitely. Well, I want you to first tell us a little bit about, we'll get into the stories and we'll get into the times, but what's it like to research these? How do you find these stories and decide which ones are the best?
It's fascinating. I mean, I've always loved Christmas and ghost stories,
Mm-hmm.
and the genesis of this project was actually this book, which is a wonderful collection of
What's it called again?
articles.
What's it called?
There we go. Can you see that?
Christmas Past, a selection of,
Christmas Past.
okay.
Yeah. No longer in print, but it's a collection of articles, stories from Victorian periodicals. So this is what piqued my interest. And I had lots of these stories in various anthologies, and I just wanted to collect them together, really for myself to have them in one place. But once I started to research them, I discovered like the depth and breadth of the Christmas ghost story. Like all ghost stories, there's so many different types. So initially, I was planning just to have a rip-roaring horror anthology,
Mm-hmm.
but then I discovered all the different types. There's the sentimental. It's a vast genre. So I started researching online, and there's some great places that you should look. I don't know if you've ever seen archive.org.
I
This
have.
is a great site, which, yeah, they have periodicals, books on there complete, so they're really wonderful. And also the British Newspaper Library online is
Hmm.
a great
I've never been
resource.
there. British Newspaper Library.
That one you have to pay for, but it's well worth
Mm-hmm.
subscribing if you're researching.
Mm-hmm.
And just every dark corner of the internet, you can find these stories. So it's really fascinating researching, going back in time and seeing them
How long
online.
did it take you to pick like 26, 30 stories to put into a book?
Well, first of all, I just gathered as many stories as I could.
Mm-hmm.
So I actually had enough stories for maybe 6 volumes.
Okay.
And then I just tried to pick a good cross section of stories that represent the whole genre for each volume.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Um, so yeah, that putting them together seemed to be quite easy. They seem to flow quite naturally. So
So you basically have some good computer stuff to get these made into book form, then, right?
to put them in the book form, I don't use any particular program,
Mm-hmm.
just Word. And then you if you're using Amazon, they have their own software where you can upload them in book form.
Okay. I wanted to. You mentioned archive. It's funny because I was having lunch with a friend, and I was telling him about your books. He's a horror writer,
Mhm.
by the way. And I said, you got to read this story. We'll talk about it a little later, called The
Mhm.
Wondersmith. All right.
Ah,
And
yes, yes.
he goes, well, where would I find the Wondersmith? And I said, well, I'll get you the book for Christmas. But then I went home and went to archive.org and found it so he
Yeah.
can read it from there at least. Yeah, so that is a good source and everything.
It's a wonderful archive, isn't it? Because you see the periodicals as they actually were. So you have the illustrations and you see the stories in context with the other articles. So it's a wonderful
Now,
resource.
you have some of the illustrations in some of your stories, I've noticed.
Yes, yes.
And those were okay in the public domain and everything? I mean, they're very old. So.
Yeah, all in the public domain. I mean, yeah, doing these anthologies, you have to be very careful. And copyright is so complex
Oh, yeah.
and different around the world. So you have to do your homework so you don't inadvertently get into trouble.
No, I found out in Europe, copyright determines 100 years after the director is dead or something, and it's not
Yes.
that way in the U.S. And so I wasn't
Yeah.
able to use some scenes from a wonderful. Well, I think I was. I wasn't able to use them in two places of a wonderful movie
Yeah.
called The Phantom Carriage. You ever seen that?
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
it's a great
Yes.
movie,
Great
isn't it?
silent
I
movie.
watch it
Yes.
every. I watch it every New Year's. I find it better than New Year's Evil. Okay.
Ah, yeah. Copyright is tricky, isn't it? Because it's
Yeah.
some places it's the date is from the publication
Yeah.
date. Other places it's from the death of the author. So some of the stories I didn't include the illustrations because they are still in copyright, even
Yeah.
though the story isn't. So that's why some illustrations are missing.
We had to scrap an entire video on Dark Eyes of London, the human
Oh,
monster, because of the
yeah.
copyright issue, which
Oh, really?
yeah,
Is it still in copyright?
yes, because it's also from England too. Well, I want to see if you can give us an idea of why did these, well, I think we know the answer, but elaborate on why these periodicals and newspapers flourished during the Victorian period.
It was a very interesting period, and there's several factors.
Hmm.
One, we had rising literacy. So literacy had never been so high at that time. And so there was no great demand for reading material. Um, at the same time, there were technological advances. So we had high speed printing presses.
Hmm.
So periodicals, newspapers, all reading matter could be reproduced in vast volumes very cheaply. There are advances in communication. So the telegraph meant that we could get news from around the world almost in real time. And the extension of the train network meant that you could deliver the periodicals and the newspapers very quickly to all parts of the world. And society was changing. Um, and so the periodicals were able to meet the demands. So you would have periodicals for men, for women, for children, different levels of society, all interests from politics to sports. So they were able to cater for this massive new reading public.
And they were affordable, right?
Oh, yes, yes. Um, I think in the 1830s, 1840s, there were certain taxes were abolished, which made newspapers cheaper, so more people can read them, and because the periodicals were printed in such vast numbers, then obviously the price went down. And one of the plus points of the periodicals was that they published serialized novels.
Oh yeah, Dickens was
So
serialized quite a bit, right?
yeah, so Dickens had his own periodicals where he serialized his novels. And so people who couldn't afford books could read them in the cheap periodicals. So it really was a golden era. And the periodicals would also publish special Christmas numbers in
Mm.
addition to the regular issue. And the newspapers would have their Christmas supplements. And these became the natural home for the Christmas ghost story.
Oh, that's so fascinating. They didn't
Mm-hmm.
have other media except maybe magic lanterns. I don't know if they even had them in that
Yeah,
time period.
yeah, that's
But
true. Yes.
so the imagination of the reader, I have kids I taught tell me, I don't know, I need to listen to it on tape. I guess they don't even call it tape anymore because I said, you're the best narrator. And I can think of all those young children
Mhm.
reading these stories and putting it in their minds and creating their own media in a time where most media wasn't accessible.
Yeah. What's interesting as well as this period is before this, the ghost story or any storytelling was oral. And the advantage of the oral tradition is you don't have to be literate. So you don't
Hmm.
have to be able to read. So these stories were passed down orally. And it was, I think, really in the Victorian period where we had that transition to it going to the printed page, and which is maybe why we lost the oral tradition of telling ghost stories. So instead, we began to read them.
Hmm. And there were attitudes that evolved and grew on things like poverty and charitable work that probably influenced these stories too. Is that correct?
Yeah, there's if you read these stories, you'll find many of them have morals, many feature poverty, and Charles Dickens was particularly interested in this. Um, it's a complicated issue. The Victorians were deeply interested in charitable work.
Mm-hmm.
It was seen as a Christian duty. But while many people, I guess, genuinely wanted to help the poor, there was a great deal of hypocrisy.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so it was very patronizing. People looked down on the poor. Poverty was seen as a moral failing. And when charity was issued, it was issued to what was called the deserving poor
Ah,
rather
okay, I
than
see
the
it.
undeserving.
Yeah.
So the deserving poor would be widows, children, people who probably from a higher class descended into poverty.
Mm-hmm.
Um, the rest of the poor are seen as lazy, no morals. And so charity was doled out in a humiliating way, which was designed to make you not want to take charity and to get off your backside and get a job, which was impossible.
In many cases.
So Charles Dickens tried to highlight the hypocrisy of the
Well,
charity
we're not
system.
we're not going to talk about Christmas Carol, but I'm going to ask you a question. I guess we're going to talk about it because one of your other books are Christmas stories, not
Hmm.
necessarily
Hmm.
ghost stories, and you provide the shortened version of A Christmas Carol that
Yes.
Charles Dickens would go on stage and read.
Yeah.
How much, I've often wondered this, how much of the tropes, I hate that word, but I'm going to say it, the
Yeah,
tropes
me too.
that Charles Dickens writes about in A Christmas Carol, which we all accept now, how many of them might have been new things, like at the time when he wrote them? I'm thinking, that would be a tough question. I apologize. I just,
Yeah, well, no, it's quite true, particularly in England, because he was really talking about things that many people had forgotten. So we
mhm.
had the English Civil War. And after the English Civil War, the Puritans, who were the victors, banned Christmas. It was seen as
For 20 years or so,
unreligious.
right? Yeah.
Yeah. So many of the traditions had already been lost.
Hmm.
And Charles Dickens was trying to reintroduce it, not on his own, there were other
Yeah,
factors
of
as well.
course.
But so at that time, we're already looking back to a period where all the past and trying to revive the past. And many of those traditions weren't revived. But I think our modern Christmas really, we can honestly say it comes from the efforts of Charles Dickens,
Yeah.
and people embraced this
Hmm.
new tradition.
That's why I like the 51 version the best because of the scene, even though it's really not necessarily in the book, when Scrooge runs down to the charwoman who's
Mm-hmm.
frightened of him. That's a very, very touching scene. Plus, I learned a wonderful phrase, Bob's your uncle, from
Ah,
watching that
yes, yes.
movie.
Yeah, actually, we watched it a couple of days ago, and my wife, who's Japanese, said, "What does it mean? What's Bob your uncle?"
I don't know.
Yeah,
I don't know what it means, except it's an excellent. It's something when you're happy, I think.
yeah, Bob's your uncle. Yeah. How to explain that? I've been away from England so long, I've forgotten these kind of natural phrases.
In that movie, it's almost like he's forgotten. I don't see him high in the credits, but Ernest Thesiger is so great in that
Yeah,
movie. Yeah, he
yeah.
is really great.
He seems very different from the Bride of Frankenstein, isn't
Oh,
isn't
he
he?
sure
Very
does.
different
But I
character.
love him
Yes.
sitting by Marley's door, And
Ah, yes. As Scrooge comes up the stairs, he's waiting there, sitting in his
yeah.
chair.
I'm going to say one
And
more
then,
thing. Oh, go on, go on.
no, so I just love that
Yeah.
scene where Marley dies, and then Ernest Thesiger comes in through the door and says, "Ah, I knew he was
Always,
dead."
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, that is
yeah.
good. Uh,
So he has the sixth sense.
when you talk about the right poor and the non-deserving poor or something, that reminded me of something in Orwell's novel Down and Out in Paris and London, where he's walking among the homeless, and they're treated like horrid, except
Mm.
when he says his profession used to be a journalist, and the old guy at the what do they call it, the spike, says, "Oh, so you once were a gentleman." And he goes, "Well, that's a bloody shame, Governor, bloody shame." He treats him with just out of the ordinary favoritism the entire night they're in there, simply to hear the word gentleman in an old soldier's ear. So yeah, that's interesting when you told me that, 'cause that's what made me think of. All right, what I want to do is talk about some of the stories. We won't give the plots away. I do want to
Okay.
urge people to please read these stories. Read them anytime, but preferably after 10 o'clock. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. And I want to, when we go to each story, we can mention the author, but I want to talk about the setting of the story and how it relates to people's mores and traditions in that time period. And I'll give a brief, not giving away the plot thing. The first is called The Old Nurse's Story, and it's in the first book. And it talks about a woman who works as a caretaker for an infant, and she's obviously not too educated, but she knows how to do her job. And the parents die, and they go up into this forbidding little estate up in the mountains where there's a plateau above it, and it's snowy, and somebody's playing ghostly music, and there's two old ladies that live there. And how is that indicative of what the people of that era would have thought about, And
Well, it's very traditional, isn't it? That the ghost stories were often set in castles or stately homes, often in remote places you've never been. So very removed from people's daily life.
yeah, there's a
That
sense of
story
isolation in that place for some people, I
are
think.
very isolated. I mean, the two main sequences in the story, the past and the present of the story, are both set in the depths of winter. And Elizabeth Gaskell really does a great job. You can feel the cold
Yeah,
oozing off the
definitely.
pages. I almost feel like my windows are frosting and I can see my breath. And but it also, people could relate to it because of the nurse. You say she was a poor girl, so she was poor, but it's emphasized she comes from a poor family, but a good
Family,
family.
yeah, good point, good
Yeah,
point.
yeah, and she is educated, so
Yeah.
she's actually taken out of school to take up this post as a nurse.
The psych,
And
oh, go on. I don't want to cut you
yeah,
off.
sorry, Elizabeth Gaskell. This story was published in one of Dickens's periodicals. Her and Dickens were very interested in social change, so this is why you get that aspect weaved into the fabric of the story.
Well, some themes of the story too is the eeriness of seeing a little child outside in a
Very,
potentially
very,
dangerous situation.
yes,
And then there's the long ago regrets and guilt,
yes.
That's in a lot of those stories too, right?
Yes, and the very good moral of this story is no matter how much you repent, the sins of the past
Good
cannot
point.
be.
Yeah.
It's great.
Oh yeah, I hope we.
But also, you get, I mentioned in the introduction to one of these books, racism was normal at that time. So in this story, we have the foreigner, the foreign musician.
Yes, yes, the foreign I hadn't
Don't
thought
really
of
want
that.
to go into that, but he does not do the honorable thing, which leads to the tragedy.
Now
So it has,
the second
it,
story is by Fitzjames O'Brien,
yeah,
and it's called The Wondersmith, and
yeah,
it takes place in New York City.
yeah.
It has what probably would be considered anti-Semitism in it too, to some degree, and also anti-Roma in it. But
It's anti everybody
yeah,
who's foreign, isn't
yeah,
it?
I gotta tell you though, I didn't write down the name. It's either Goschel or Gola Street or something.
Ah, yeah,
The,
Goulash Street,
yeah, the
yes.
description of
Ah,
all the people around the stores.
yeah,
I mean, I can't believe how well it's described. You almost feel like you're walking through it when he talks
yes,
about all the activity on the street, the book stalls, the
yeah,
bird place, the Wondersmith place by I don't want to give away too much of the story, but
yeah.
what I
So
thought,
obviously he was familiar with those places.
yeah,
And when you first read that introduction and he's describing the people, you feel it's very condescending as well as being
yeah, good
racist, looking
point. You're
down
right.
on the
You're right.
poor.
Yeah.
But actually, it's not, because he was very interested in social issues and he was very familiar with poverty. He came from Ireland, so he knew the potato famine. He lived in New York and he knew the poverty very intimately. So it was really social commentary. not looking down on them, and he's trying to highlight the plight of these people.
And you have a whole bunch of evil people who gathered together under
Yeah.
the chief evil person, whose name is
Yes.
Hip, who kind of reminded
Yes.
me of Shylock a little bit because he's so
Yes.
bitter,
Yes.
and
Yeah.
and I don't want to give away what they concoct, but it could be in an Eli Roth horror movie, I think.
It
Yeah,
would make a very good horror movie. Yes.
yeah, and
Yes.
oh, go on.
Their main purpose is wonderful. I won't mention it, but their plot is wonderfully evil.
But it also talks about excessive appetite and excessive
Yes.
passions, where people are
Yes.
not being taken care to prepare themselves for what they want to do, and if you don't do that, disaster. Even there's a romance,
Yes.
and they're by two people who are treated cruelly, but so much in this story appears to a lot of the plot is dictated by happenstance. All right.
Yes. Yes.
Fortunate for one person, unfortunate for the other.
Yeah.
You talked about him, being conscious of social change and social conditions.
Mm.
What other messages do you think might be in the word Wondersmith?
As you mentioned, not preparing. So it's a snipe at the rich and the wealthy.
Yeah.
Yeah, who are maybe not even aware of this world, and their riches are built on the poverty and suffering of this underclass.
Yeah, that's a
So it's a
good.
warning that if you don't do the right thing, this underclass will rise up and destroy you.
That's a good
And it's
point.
only by luck, isn't it, in the story that
Oh
there's a
yeah.
happy ending. Yeah.
I also like the fact there's a story within the story by the
Hmm.
young man who loves the young woman. I thought
Yes,
that was,
yes,
and also talks about the monkeys. How you'd have monkeys when you go around singing and entertaining.
yes,
Orwell
yeah.
talks about that too in Down and Out in Paris. That's one of my favorite books, so I might
Yeah,
sometimes go
the,
to it.
the people in the story, they're really struggling to get by, aren't they?
Yeah.
They're only just surviving, and they have to use any method that they can and endure every indignation to try and just get a daily crust.
One thing I thought about in that story though was you have a lot of shopkeepers living in poverty, but
Yes.
probably amassing small fortunes. All right, to some degree.
Could be. Some do seem quite comfortable, but then you have the bookseller who
Well, the
nobody
bookseller, no,
buys.
he's on the outs. He's one of the people that you
Yeah,
don't give sympathy for.
yes.
I was
But
thinking,
the bird seller, yes, he has a wonderful menagerie in his shop, so he must be doing well.
an old, I can't remember if his name was Hippie or not. I read the story twice. The main guy, the Wondersmith, and
Yes, her, he,
the fortune teller is very interesting because how do you gather souls? They don't tell us in the story.
no, no. So this was one of the things about O'Brien. His stories often didn't have a scientific explanation.
Well, that's kind
So they were often all had this unexplained or almost magical quality to how things happened.
Yeah, and it looks like two of those characters are pretty stupid of the main antagonists.
Yeah.
I liked the description of someone too hefty sitting in a chair and something slowly coming out of the pockets.
Yeah, yeah,
All
yeah,
right. Well, that was one of my favorite stories. The next one
yeah.
is also one of my favorite stories because it's so freaking clever. It's called
Um,
Thurlow's Ghost Story by John
yeah,
Kendrick Bangs.
yeah.
And
Great writer.
yeah, it is. And this is a journalist story. I like journalist stories
Yeah.
too. Well, he's not really a journalist, he's a writer, but it's just close enough. And I don't want to give away the plot, but he's in trouble. He has to give an explanation to his editor.
Yeah.
And he also has to turn something in. And believe me, procrastination is something I know really well, okay?
Yeah.
Okay, so in fact, there's a wonderful SpongeBob SquarePants episode. The only one I really care about is called Procrastination. But anyways, so I know that feeling of having to write something and not being able to. And he's tempted. I don't want to give away the plot, I'm sorry. But I do like the fact that he's in a home. He's comfortably in his home. obviously he's doing pretty well, but he has this great fear of
Mm,
ruin for him and his children and wife if he doesn't comply.
yeah.
Was there a lack of security even among the middle class in that time period?
Oh, yeah. I guess there was. It was so easy to lose a job, and then your world comes crashing down. There's no social security. You know, so often I think these people would be living at the limits to their means, so they're just one paycheck away from total disaster.
I just completed my social security application. So,
And
okay, but oh, go
it's
on.
interesting because yeah, he's suffering from writer's block, which is something Bangs never did. He was very prolific, but he was an editor as well as a writer. He was I forget, maybe his title was editor of humor at Harper's Magazine. He was working on three magazines. So that he was an editor and a writer. So this story could be seen as he's writing from himself to himself because he fulfilled
That's a
both
good point.
roles that we see in the story. Yeah, very
And
interesting.
the Mr. Thurlow, he
Mm,
has a inner battle going on, which he acknowledges between his good self and his bad self throughout the story.
yes,
And we all
yes,
know, we all have our bad selves and good selves. So people can
yeah,
resonate with that, right? Thinking,
yeah, and that's interesting because Banks was a big admirer of Poe, and he would often use his technique. So it's not obvious in this one, but it's made explicit in the illustrations, which I didn't use in the book, that his bad self is a kind of doppelganger.
ah,
They look very similar. So maybe it's shades of William Wilson, little echo of Poe
that's
there.
a good point. Yeah, there was a
Yeah.
scene where he wants to go away from doing something he knows is wrong, but his bad
Yes.
self browbeats him into it. But that bad self must be inside Mr. Thurlow anyways, you know.
Yes.
But then
Yeah,
there's
of
this
course.
practical joke played. It's a crazy
Yeah.
story. I just love it. And I can't.
Yeah.
I will
But
not give away the ending to it. I just
no.
won't do
But
that.
it's interesting that every time his bad side beats him into submission and he agrees to do something bad, then his bad side tells him he's a fool.
Yeah, exactly. And
Yeah.
I often wonder if the visitor he gets is only in his mind. I don't know. All right,
Yes. Yeah.
but that's
Which could explain something that happens in the story,
yeah,
which we won't mention.
yeah. Well, let's go to a
Yes.
fourth story. I know this is one of your favorites, "The
Oh, I
Portent
love
of
this
the
one. Yeah.
Shadow" by E.
Yeah.
Nesbit. Tell us about
Yes.
that story a little bit without giving away the plot.
Well, what's wonderful, what I particularly like about this story is it starts in a typical setting
Yeah.
in the big stately home. But then the heart of the story is in a small villa in the suburbs. So it's a middle class, small suburban house. And once you transfer the ghost from the stately home to a small home, you get this very claustrophobic atmosphere, which and it's terrifying because we can all relate to we all live most of us live in small houses
Yeah.
so suddenly it becomes not some remote fear that could happen to somebody else. It becomes very realistic. You could imagine every shadow in your own home, what's in the door when you open the closet. So I think she did a fantastic job of transporting the story into a location we can all relate to.
Yeah, and it's eerie. It starts out like you said, and then it gets eerier and eerier. You don't quite understand why it's eerie,
Yeah.
but you see the disquiet people are feeling. You see the various girls in maturity level. Some don't really.
Yes.
Yeah, and then you just get punched in the gut at the end,
Yeah.
which I won't mention. But it also is a
No.
story of somebody regretting something, not just regretting what happened, regretting they didn't do what they should have done when it was happening. Perhaps, all right.
Yes. Also, the storyteller was someone who had wrong done to her
Yeah, too.
by
Yes.
the person she's helping.
Yeah.
So you may be left thinking, is this shadow something from herself? Is it an externalization of her own anger and need for revenge, which we can't go into? But
No, it can't. Yeah.
I'm left wondering. She seems like she's happy to help in this difficult situation, but is something deep inside her still bitter about what happened and getting revenge?
That's what, people don't understand. My wife sometimes doesn't understand why I like to watch movies on television. instead
Hmm.
of on a DVD because I tell her this is stupid, but I like to know other people are watching, and and
Ah, yeah,
and,
yeah.
and so when I read these stories, I keep wishing I could go back to the newsstand and buy them.
Yeah, yeah, I do miss that. We are watching something on TV and next day saying, "Did you see that on TV?" And everybody saw it.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I
But now everything's so fractured.
it happened so quickly. When I was on my mission for the LDS Church 40
Mm,
years ago now,
mm,
I would go to newsstands in Lima. And
mm,
people didn't subscribe in Lima because if you did, just wasn't possible, okay? But there would be like
mm.
40 different newspapers and magazines in the
Wow.
newsstand to choose from daily. And Orwell writes about families trying a different Sunday paper every few
Mm,
months and stuff like every few weeks.
hmm.
Those days are kind of gone, you know.
Oh yeah, talking about rising literacy rates in the Victorian era, I feel literacy rates are declining. The
Yeah,
number of people I speak to who don't read,
it's sad, isn't it?
they just watch YouTube all day, and I think they say, "Oh, I don't like reading." How can you not like
Like
reading?
reading because you're the narrator. That's what people don't understand. I don't think
Yeah,
you
yeah.
control. I mean, I love the guy that does Harry Potter, but I still prefer to read it. You
Oh
know,
yeah, yeah,
yeah,
yeah,
because I can. I don't know. Maybe I'm just. You understand. I know that.
yeah,
Okay,
yeah,
so
definitely.
well, let's go to one I enjoyed too, called "My Christmas Mystery" by William
Ah,
Kingston Sawyer, and that's
yeah.
an interesting story because it starts out. The guy has a hubbub life, all right, and he
Hmm.
doesn't expect to receive an invitation, but he gets
Hmm.
one, and then he gets a very unpleasant letter from an angry mother, and
Yes.
he's trying to get rid of it, and I can't give too much of this, but
Yeah.
he assigns a youngster to look into it, a younger employee of the bank to look into
Hmm.
it. He gets a ghostly encounter on a train,
Yeah.
and then gets there, but it's mainly it's a story of a spirit coming back to right a wrong, right? Wouldn't you say?
Or coming back to ask someone to help
Help. Yeah,
to
that's
write.
better. Better.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah. And I love at one point in the story, um, trying not to give anything away, but our hero confronts our villain, and the villain asks, "By what authority do
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
interfere?" And he
Yeah.
says, "By the authority of the dead."
Yeah. That's a great
That's a
line. That's a great
wonderful
line.
line.
And that's
Yeah.
a story I'm sure that caught people reading all night until it was done.
Yeah, I read it yesterday by the Christmas tree lights, and it's very, very good story.
It
But I
is.
think perhaps one that people are not familiar with. It's not one of the more famous ones. And it's interesting that Sawyer was a very, very popular and prolific writer, very well respected in Victorian literary circles. And then after he died, he immediately sank into obscurity.
He did.
Um,
Yeah. Well, you know, a lot of these people, most people wouldn't know who they were today, unfortunately.
No,
I
no, that's true.
think.
Yeah, and that's part of the not just finding the stories, but researching the writers
I
is
do,
something
yeah,
I
I do
enjoy.
appreciate that you have links in the Kindle in the see, book two is not in Kindle, but book
No,
one
unfortunately,
is,
yes,
and it has links where you can click on the writers' names and learn more about
yeah,
them, and you
yeah,
can in the second book at least find out where the books were published and things like that.
yeah,
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 and
yeah.
let's go to book two, which I have been reading more of this year. Although I read, actually, we're talking about more in book one, but I read the
Mm,
whole book again of book two.
mm.
This is one of my favorites because it's a very religious tale, and it has like a
Mhm.
moral lesson at the end of it. It's called "The
Yes.
Beeston Ghost," or 40 Years Ago, a Norfolk tale by the Reverend John Swafield Orton. And what's
Mm.
interesting is this was written to raise funds to build a church in Beeston in the late 19th century.
Yeah, to repair the church. So yes, it didn't appear in a magazine or newspaper.
Yeah,
It was
just
just published locally to try to raise money, which was successful. The church is still there today, so he was
I
successful.
had to read it twice because it was very gratifying to read the dialect, the way they were talking.
Ah, yes,
And
yes.
they're in a pub, which probably was familiar to people back then,
Yeah.
and they were talking much about poverty. There's people don't have
Yeah.
enough and everything, and there's a lot of grumbling about the poverty and the people who are
Yes.
rich in that story. But there's a sexton who's not the smartest guy
Yes.
in the world, but
Yeah.
and there's a bragger who says nothing, no ghost can harm him, and one guy who's just going back home. But what I like is about how the tone changes from kind of risible to okay,
Hmm.
we're going to tackle this. I'm not worried to abject fear, which leads
Yes.
later in the morning to a big surge in trying to figure out, what's going on. But what do you think
Hmm.
about churches in the country and places like that, and pubs and the atmosphere and struggling families and things like that?
Yeah. Well, this is interesting because John Swaffield Orton based the location of the story on his own village, and so he would have known this environment intimately. The pub, as you said, the pub is very beautifully painted. So the pub would have been the center of social life. Maybe the church and the pub would be the only social life you would have. But yes, life in the countryside was very precarious, very dependent on the elements,
And
and so people.
yeah, there's an
So
element of
people
oh,
could
go on.
easily,
I'm sorry. Go on.
yeah, sorry. So people could very easily slide into poverty, and the church was where you would have to go for relief.
But the
But
story
many
also talks
people,
about pride. This family is
yes,
willing to
yes.
starve rather than take anything from the parish.
Well, yes, if going back to A Christmas Carol, when the two gentlemen come to try to collect money from Scrooge, and Scrooge says, "Are there no prisons? Are there no workhouses?" And they say many people would rather die than go there.
Yeah, that's. I was thinking of that when I read that part
Yeah,
about one of the characters in that.
yes. And there's a great poem, Christmas Day in the Workhouse, that describes people's feelings of literally dying rather than go to these places. Um, and these people were just too proud to take the charity in this story. They would rather starve. But then we have the twist. They have this great pride, but then they commit a crime,
Yeah,
which kind of contradicts the pride.
and the minister teaches a lesson, doesn't he? In this, more or
Yeah.
less. Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting that the minister is a wonderful person in this
Yeah,
story,
he is. He is.
and you know, the hypocrisy of charity that we talked about is completely missing in this story. He is the embodiment of genuine Christian charity and forgiveness.
Well, you know what? I'm going to go back to Orwell again. In that same book, they're getting money they're getting food from religious people, all right? And
Hmm.
most time they have to say thank you and have a prayer.
Yeah,
But at one
yeah,
place, what they call it the embankment, the guy just goes, and without even looking him in the eye, just gives them a certain amount of money. And Orwell writes, for the first time, there was genital gratification.
yeah,
Everybody, because, and one guy said, he'll never be a bishop. And Orwell says, that's meant as a great compliment to the
yeah,
clergyman.
yeah,
Well, last thing I want
yeah.
to say about this story is to me, it came the closest to reading an Agatha Christie type mystery short story,
Oh,
where you
really?
find out what actually happened at the end. Someone deduces it.
Ah,
I don't know.
I have to admit, I've only ever read one Agatha Christie novel.
My
So,
wife and I have read about all of them.
ah,
Well, they're called cozy mysteries. They're fun. They're
yeah,
fun.
I enjoyed the one I read very much, and I thought I must read more, but I haven't got round to it yet.
Try Hercule Poirot. He's a lot of fun.
You know that I've avoided him because of the TV adaptations, and I always think, what a pompous
He is
so
a
and so.
he is a
I don't know
pompous, but
what
he's a
that's
fun.
called.
But his mysteries are wonderful. But
Oh,
but he got
okay.
Miss Marple too. He may like Miss Marple.
Yeah, Miss Marple again, she lives in a tiny village where there are dead bodies littering the streets. I'm surprised there's anybody left living in the
And
village.
my wife and I think about that when we watch something called Midsummer Mysteries. It's in the
Ah,
countryside, and it seems like it must have the highest murder rate in the world.
yeah, yeah.
All right. Well, anyways, let's get to one I like too because it was so
Mm.
ominous. All right. It was called
Yes,
The Ghost Summons by
yes,
Ada Busson with two S's.
yes,
And it's about a person who's struggling at the beginning. He's a
yes.
doctor,
Yeah.
And my goodness, he gets well, I can't give this away, but someone
Yeah.
makes a request of him, but he has to go there and
Hmm.
sit with this person,
Yeah.
and he thinks the person is nuts. But I
Yeah.
like the isolation of the room, okay,
Yes.
and you know, a lot of good horror stories have gradual terror, particularly when you're watching
Mm.
Marley, before Marley comes, and there's a lot of
Yeah.
gradual terror in this story, and then a kind of irony that the person's skepticism turns out to be obviously something's really going to happen. What do you think
Yeah.
about this story?
Well, it's very interesting. You mentioned the isolation of the room.
Yeah,
So this is a room in a family home. Well, no children, but a husband and wife. But the husband has a private entrance to his chambers through the back door.
yeah.
Um, so we don't know what he's been getting up to in those chambers, but it could explain what happens to him.
Well, he has to atone for something, I think. He's
Yeah, but he doesn't atone, does he?
no, no,
No.
no, no,
And it's not really explained
no.
why he engages the services of the doctor. But again, it is a good example of how precarious life was. So we have a doctor who you would think would be quite secure, but this one is in financial danger. So this comes at a very opportune time for him. It saves him. But why? Why is he invited? We're not told.
Yeah, that is fascinating.
Yeah.
It's just one of those mysticism things that keeps you, not mysticism, mysteries, touch things with horror that keeps you up late at night wondering
Yeah, I think
afterwards.
it's another example of the vengeful spirit, which always seems to come from a female character.
Yeah, that's good.
And but what's interesting about this one is that the person who we can assume projects the spirit actually sees the spirit themselves.
That's a good point. That's a good point.
Yeah, why? So they're turning in on themselves, maybe through guilt. But we're not given any details. We have to fill in the blanks. Why is this private stairway to his bedroom? So what has been going on? Yeah.
Okay, well, let's go to one that also had religious overtones called Bone to
Mm.
Bone by
Ah,
E.J.
yes.
Swain, and it's based on an anthology on
Yeah.
the stories of a certain reverend. I can't remember his name now. It
Yes.
was written in
Oh,
the early 20th century,
yeah. Yeah.
but it's the idea of a guy just having a feeling to
Mm.
get up and he can't sleep. He goes to the
Yeah.
library and he literally gets guided to how to go. So it's a bit of a clever
Yes.
story, and and there's obviously a spirit that doesn't feel like they're at rest now. They need something completed.
Yes. Yes. The rest has been disturbed. And it's interesting that Swain was at King's College with M.R. James. So they were friends and
Yeah, I
colleagues.
read that. I read that. I think yeah,
Yeah, so Swain attended M.R. James's Christmas Eve storytelling
that must have been a lot of
sessions.
fun, wouldn't it?
Yeah, must have been, yes. And Swain was is considered, I guess, one of the first important imitators of James. So the story has echoes of James, but it's very gentle. It doesn't have the
Oh,
terror.
you're
Yeah.
right. It also is a good story if you want to have a graveyard setting, okay, more or less.
Yes.
Outdoors,
Yes.
ominous outdoors late at night. And suddenly they
Yes.
have books appear out of nowhere in the library and things like that.
Yes, but
And
yes, the main character is a rationalist, isn't he? He hears all these noises, but he explains them away to himself. And the more persistent the noise comes, the more rational his explanation becomes until he's forced to
enforced to
confront.
confront it. Yeah, he finally
Yeah, yeah,
realizes, hey, I've got all these clues. I've got to figure this out. And I
yeah.
like the
But there's
back. Oh, go on, go on.
no, sorry, I just said that unlike James, there's no fear.
Yeah, yeah, that's
He's not
true.
terrified by this encounter. He just goes with the flow.
That's a good point.
Yeah.
Uh, the last story is one I was an editor for a couple decades, and so
Yeah.
the Wicked Editor's Christmas Dream by
Hmm.
Alice Mary Vince. And
Yeah.
I like the setting of an editor's office, okay, that's in
Hmm.
there. I like I wouldn't call it cold-hearted, but
Mm,
the sort of amoral setting, amoral personality of the editor,
mm.
and the cynicism of the editor, um, and the fact that, well, he doesn't really change much. Okay.
No, no. There's no Scrooge like
Yeah, there's no. He's not going to be changed into somebody better, you know.
no, no. But this is clearly a parody of A Christmas Carol.
Yeah, it
And
is.
it's interesting. A Christmas Carol was only published maybe 11 years earlier. But from this story, we can already see that people are thinking, gosh, not that stale old story again. So they're not, it's not the heartwarming story anymore. It's a rather tired and tedious story.
Yeah, and they talk
But
about how the whole thing is editors go for sensationalism. All right,
yeah,
they go
yeah,
for tragedy and try to. Doesn't really matter if they're fudging things because they want to make sales, and that's kind of highlighted in this story, right?
yeah. I guess you have to be ruthless to be an
Yeah,
editor.
yeah,
And you know, going back to Charles Dickens when he was editing, he was a real tyrant. His editing was ruthless without any consultation of the writer, which caused a lot of friction.
So it talks about the traditional mores and even cliches of a newspaper editor. I mean,
Mm,
you know, oh, like in that same book, Orwell writes something about how he says begging could be a respectable profession because it's high-minded compared to a newspaper editor. You know, so
ah,
I like the raw honesty of the end of the story without getting into detail
mm,
on it. And it also, God, there's a Boris Karloff movie made before Frankenstein where he plays a completely amoral journalist. And
mhm.
all I can remember is Cagney's in it and Marion Morris is in it. And I
Ah,
can't remember the title simply because I'm
yeah,
sitting here right now. If
yeah.
I wasn't, I'd know right it was. But he plays one of the most immoral newspaper reporters ever in a movie. Um, I'll have to send you a link to that when I figure it out. I'll probably put a link
Yeah.
in here too. But that was one of my personal favorites simply because I
Mm.
love journalism and I love to see an idea. This is way back in the 19th century, so they were no different back, back
Yeah,
then.
yeah.
It's
When was this written? Maybe
I think it's
1894, I
yeah,
think.
1894, yeah.
Yeah,
And
newspaper
I don't
supplement.
know how much Alice Mary Vince did, but
Um, we know absolutely nothing about her.
that's what I was meant to. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, this is the only known story by her.
You wonder if it's a
Uh,
pseudonym, you know?
yeah, so I think it was published in a supplement of a local newspaper.
Paper. Yeah,
So it's a good one to rescue from obscurity.
definitely.
And I like the fact that you know, as a parody of A Christmas Carol, she clearly took the more of gravy than of ghost about you comment to
Yeah,
heart, and
yeah.
she ran with it for this story.
But the editor's so caustic throughout it,
Yes,
you
yeah.
know? I mean, it's almost like he'd probably figure he can pay his way out of hell if he has to or something. I don't know.
Yeah, well, I think yeah, there's no redemption because I think yeah, he's a very modern person. I think well, it's all nonsense.
Yeah,
I can't be redeemed. I am what I am, and he's quite happy with it. He's successful, so
mhm,
he doesn't need ghosts or redemption.
exactly. Now, I wanted to bring something back briefly before we conclude. The portent of the shadow also has a
Mm,
dark kind of stain. I don't know. I
mm.
never knew if it was a stain or an image that always comes before something bad's about to happen. That really creeped me out. That was
Yes.
used in the story when the woman was retelling what happened, and even
Mm.
that even pops up later. I think that always just creeped me out for some reason.
Yeah, well, it's like you know we've all been freaked out by shadows or things that appear to be something they're not out of the tail of our eyes. So
Yeah.
I can you can relate to that very well, very well.
Well, tell me while I look for something real quick. Tell me you're
Mm.
thinking you're going to get a third volume out, right? Eventually.
Yes,
Do
yes.
you have some stories, or are you just going to go through them and cull through them again and see what you like?
Actually, because it's been what 2 years since the last one, and in that period, I've just put the ghost stories aside. I've been
Hmm.
working on other things. So at the moment, I have no idea what
Well,
stories I.
you got 12 months to get it going if you want.
Yeah, yeah. I must. At the moment, I'm just trying to finish off a volume of Gothic poetry that I've
That'd
been
be great.
writing, and I hope so. Thank you. As soon as that's put to bed, then I'm gonna go back to the ghost stories because I did so much work. I really should get the next 4 volumes out.
Let me say that you have also edited, and I think you wrote these perhaps, Japanese ghost stories.
Yeah, I wrote those. Yes,
Yeah,
yes.
my son-in-law's getting that book for Christmas.
Yeah.
Um, you also, of course, you co-wrote with Frank Delestrito, Vampire Over London, Bela Lugosi
Mhm.
in Britain, which cries out for a streamer miniseries, but who knows? That's
Yeah,
never
I
gonna.
wish someone would either make a radio or a movie version. It would be wonderful.
Yeah, I've enjoyed those things you've shared with the boy who played Tiny Tim in the 51 Scrooge,
Ah, yes,
who directed a
yes.
lot of stuff. That was interesting.
Yeah, he went on to be a very successful radio producer and director. Did some great, great radio plays.
Philip Frost was his name, have I got that right?
No, Dearman. Forgotten his first name.
Did
Was
I
it
do the
Ian?
38 Scrooge? I hope I didn't. I probably did.
Yeah.
Um, well, maybe I did the one from 1935. I've been watching A Christmas Carols all month, all right? Have you ever
Yeah.
seen the one with Sir Seymour Hicks?
Yes, I love all of those classic ones. They're all
I
great.
love the expressionism in that film.
Yeah,
Quite
yeah,
good.
yeah, yeah.
You've
Very good.
also written a book called Nursery Crimes,
Hmm.
which is stories, whimsical stories, witty stories. And what is the name of the artist? Aurelie Grasse? Um,
Aurier. Aurier.
REA. See, I don't mean any damage. When is the Gothic poetry going to be out, do you think?
Oh, it depends on how quickly I can finish, but I would hope late January, early February next
Hmm.
year, I think.
Okay. Well, it's been wonderful.
Mm.
Urge people get these books.
Yeah,
This one,
thank you.
it's not on Kindle, but believe me, you should
No,
buy these the Dead Tree Way. They're funner to
yeah.
read. Although I still have to put the things close to my eyes sometimes, unfortunately, with my age here and everything.
Yeah, I can barely see you at the moment because I haven't got my glasses on.
Oh, well, you have a nice background there. Looks like there's a Boris Karloff something behind you. I can't quite make it out. It's sort of a yellowish.
Oh, this one.
The
This
Mummy,
is
the Mummy. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, this is actually the soundtrack that my son
Oh,
created for his own amusement because he
wow.
likes to make soundtracks of movies where the soundtrack hasn't been released. So, yeah, that's his artwork,
Wow.
and
That's really
it's
cool.
great.
Tell him
I listen to this one a lot. Very
Tell
nice.
him congratulations. That's fantastic.
Oh, thank you. Yeah.
This is more kitschy, but I bought the soundtrack, which is basically just the movie of Plan 9 from Outer Space. I listen to that a
Ah,
lot myself.
yeah, yeah.
Um,
I bought that on vinyl maybe back in the late 80s, early 90s.
mhm.
It's fantastic.
It is a
I
lot of
love
fun, isn't
listening
it?
to that.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Well, let me do my little spiel now. We're planning on Crunch, and subscribe to us on YouTube. And we're on TikTok. We don't do it as much. I usually get my
Mm,
daughter to do that because she gets more hits than I would. But and
mm.
then we have Plan 9 Crunch podcast and blog on Facebook, and we have plan9crunch.com. So thank you very much, and that's a wrap.